China announces over $2.6 billion tariffs on Canada. South Korean president released from detention. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for tuning in. You're watching World Today with me, Daniel Bahardin. A Hamas delegation that arrived in Egypt on Friday is in discussions with Cairo on initiating talks for the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal, according to two Hamas spokesmen. Hamas spokesman Hazim Qasim confirmed on Saturday that the delegation led by Mohammed Ismail Darwish, chairman of the Hamas Shura Council, had arrived in Cairo. Qasim said the delegation is set to hold talks with Egyptian leaders on the outcomes of the Emergency Arab Summit, ways to implement its decisions, and the necessity of entering the second phase of the ceasefire. Meanwhile, another Hamas spokesman, Abdul Latif Al-Qanu, stated that mediation efforts by Egypt and Qatar were ongoing and that there were positive indicators for launching negotiations over the second phase of the ceasefire. Hamas has also called for increased aid to the Gaza Strip and the lifting of the siege on Gaza. However, on the same day, an Israeli official told Israeli media that Israel was unaware of any progress in talks with Hamas on the second phase of the ceasefire deal. A three-phase Gaza ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, brokered by Egypt, Qatar and the United States, took effect on 19th January. Yet negotiations for the second phase remain stalled after the initial 42-day phase expired on 1st March. On Tuesday, Egypt hosted an emergency Arab summit and proposed a $53 billion Gaza reconstruction plan aimed at preventing displacement. China announced tariffs on over $2.6 billion worth of Canadian agricultural and food products on Saturday, retaliating against levies Ottawa introduced in October and opening a new front in a trade war largely driven by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff threats. The levies announced by the Commerce Ministry and scheduled to take effect on 20th March match the 100% and 25% import duties Canada slapped on China-made electric vehicles and steel and aluminium products just over 4 months ago. By excluding canola, which is also known as rapeseed and was one of Canada's top exports to the world's #1 agricultural importer, Beijing may be keeping the door open for trade talks. But the tariffs also serve as a warning shot, analysts say, with the Trump administration having signaled it could ease 25% import levies the White House is threatening Canada and Mexico with. China will apply a 100% tariff to just over $1 billion of Canadian rapeseed oil, oil cakes and pea imports, and a 25% duty on $1.6 billion worth of Canadian aquatic products and pork. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said in August that Ottawa was imposing the levies to counter what he called China's intentional state-directed policy of overcapacity. In response, China in September launched an anti-dumping investigation into Canadian canola imports. Impeached South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol was released from detention on Saturday after a court voiced his arrest on procedural grounds, but he remains under investigation over his declaration of martial law. The suspended president, who was detained in a dawn raid in January on insurrection charges over his December attempt to subvert civilian rule, walked out of the detention center smiling before bowing deeply before a small crowd of cheering supporters. A court had cancelled his arrest warrant a day earlier on technical and legal grounds, a decision that prosecutors probing Yoon called unjust. Yoon was freed after the prosecutors waived their right to appeal the court verdict, which specifically concerned technical details of his detention on criminal charges. Yoon also faces a separate constitutional court ruling on whether to uphold his impeachment and formally strip him from office, with the judge's decision expected any day. South Korea must hold a fresh presidential election within 60 days if Yoon is removed. The criminal case against him will continue even if he is formally stripped of office. Iran leader Ali Khamenei said on Saturday accused the United States of bullying tactics a day after President Donald Trump said he had sent a letter to country's top authority to negotiate a nuclear deal. While delivering a speech in Tehran, Khamenei said the aim of Washington's offer for negotiations was domination rather than problem solving. Despite expressing an openness to a deal with Tehran, Trump has reinstated the maximum pressure campaign that was applied during his first term in the White House to isolate Iran from the global economy and drive its oil exports to zero. During his 2017 to 2021 term as president, Trump withdrew the U.S. a landmark deal between Iran and major powers that placed strict limits on Tehran's nuclear activities in exchange for sanctions relief. After Trump pulled out in 2018 and reimposed sanctions, Iran breached and far surpassed those limits. The United Nations nuclear watchdog chief Rafael Grossi has said time is running out for diplomacy to impose new restrictions on Iran's activities as Tehran continues to accelerate its enrichment of uranium to near weapons grade. Tehran insists its nuclear work is solely for peaceful purposes. German election winner Friedrich Merz, Conservatives and the Social Democrats SPD concluded preliminary talks on forming a coalition government on Saturday, promising to get tough on illegal migration, support industry and boost the economy. Chancellor-in-waiting Merz wants to form a coalition by Easter, which falls on 20th April this year. Merz centre-right CDU and incumbent Chancellor Olaf Scholz centre-left SPD were racing for a deal before next week, when they hope to push a loosening of Germany's borrowing limits through parliament to revive growth in Europe's largest economy and boost military spending. Germany's economy has contracted for 2 years in a row, and its car industry has struggled. Attention will also now turn to the outgoing parliament, where lawmakers will debate a 500 billion euro infrastructure fund and changes to state borrowing rules known as the debt brake from 13th March. The Bundestag lower house will vote on the measures on 18th March before the formation of a new parliament on 25th March, where both moves could get blocked by an enlarged contingent of far-right and radical left lawmakers. Merz and the SPD need the support from the Greens party to pass the measures, and Merz on Saturday said there would be intensive talks with the Greens next week. Coming up next, kidnapped 29 Colombian armed forces members released by civilians. After United States President Donald Trump's vow to take over the Arctic island of Greenland, pro-independent voices are growing louder, but some want to work with Washington. Members of Greenland's main political parties took part in a televised debate in Nuuk on Saturday, days before an election. Candidates and members of the parties, including Prime Minister Muhyiddin Aggede, discussed major issues in front of the public ahead of the 11th March election, in which independence has taken center stage after renewed U.S. interest in the island. When it comes to the issues, schools, healthcare independence, Tuesday's election is not that exceptional, according to a politician. And yet it will potentially be the most consequential in the Arctic island's history.
The election is very important, especially today that our geopolitical situation here in Greenland and what happens in the United States, according to what the new elected president announced that he wants to own Greenland, is demanding that we choose people who can cooperate, because we don't want to be part of the United States at this way.
Donald Trump's fixation with acquiring Greenland one way or the other, as he told Congress to laugh last week, means the U.S. and as a result the world is watching Greenland's election like never before. Denmark, which ruled the now autonomous territory as a colony until 1953 and continues to control its foreign and security policy, is also paying unprecedented attention for fear of losing a crucial part of its kingdom. 29 members of the Colombian armed forces who had been kidnapped by civilians under pressure from a guerrilla group in a southwestern area considered crucial for drug trafficking routes were released on Saturday. A day earlier, the Ministry of Defense announced that the troops had been abducted from 2 locations in Cauca province following attacks by a descendant faction of the group known as the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. Before the kidnapping, carried out by farmers and indigenous people coerced by the dissident faction, the ministry said there had been clashes in the area where the authorities had launched an operation to dismantle illegal armed groups controlling coca crops essential for cocaine production and trafficking. The agents were released in a region with a strong presence of the Carlos Patino group, another dissident faction that rejected the 2016 peace agreements meant to end a conflict lasting 6 decades, which claimed the lives of over 450,000 victims and displaced millions. According to the government, that faction poses a threat to the life and security of communities in the Canon del Muquay and the Cauca department, where they forcibly recruit minors.
Las fuerzas militares tienen la instrucción.
Waving flags and carrying signs, several dozen demonstrators gathered to express their anger over the Trump administration's handling of Ukraine and federal job cuts outside the Cincinnati home of Vice President J.D. Vance on Saturday. Demonstrators said they were upset about the way President Donald Trump and Vance engaged with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky during his visit to the White House the previous week. During the televised quarrel, Vance questioned Zelensky about his reluctance to embrace Trump's plan to hold joint talks with Ukraine and Russia. Vance also asked the Ukrainian leader if he had thanked Trump for his involvement in the process.
I'm pretty disappointed in the direction that our country has decided to take. I don't believe that the majority of Americans actually want what's happening internationally, domestically. I think that we're in a really dangerous place where democracy is in trouble, and I came down here to be with people who have the same ideas and want to use their voice in the way that we're allowed to as Americans.
Trump paused U.S. military aid and intelligence sharing with Kyiv this week following the clash with Zelensky. Demonstrators also expressed concern about the administration's handling of domestic issues, including an unprecedented number of federal job cuts and discussions about possible changes to Medicaid or Medicare. Vance served as a U.S. Senator representing Ohio before becoming Vice President. Dozens of men were hit with sticks on Saturday as the northern Indian town of Barsana began its Holi celebrations. The famous Lathmar Holi celebrations in Mathura's Barsana began with great enthusiasm on Saturday as devotees and tourists gathered to witness the traditional festivities. Donning padded cushions on top of their heads, dozens of men lined up to be playfully pounded by women with long wooden sticks as crowd members threw colored powder into the air and cheered. The unique tradition recreates the legend of the Hindu god Krishna, who is believed to have visited Barsana to shower goddess Radha in bright colors. Radha responded by playfully beating Krishna and his friends with sticks, causing them to flee the town. Earlier on Friday, celebrations kick off with Laddu Mar Holi at the Sri Ladliji Maharaj Temple in Barsana, where devotees threw sweets at each other in a joyous ritual. The Hindu festival of Holi, also known as the Festival of Colors, heralds the beginning of spring. Japan will mark the 14th anniversary of a massive earthquake and tsunami on Tuesday that left more than 20,000 people dead or missing and triggered a triple meltdown at a nuclear plant. The 2011 catastrophe triggered the worst nuclear accident since Chernobyl at Tokyo Electric Power Co.'s TEPCO Fukushima Daiichi plant, 220 kilometers northeast of Tokyo. Hundreds of thousands of residents were forced to flee their homes after the disaster, which was classified a Level 7 event on the International Nuclear and Radiological Event Scale. Japanese utilities have struggled to restart nuclear reactors since the 2011 Fukushima disaster, limiting nuclear power to just 8.5% of Japan's electricity supply in 2023. As a result, Japan is now heavily reliant on liquefied natural gas (LNG) and coal, with just 14 nuclear power plants operating with a total capacity of 13,253 megawatts. In August 2023, Japan began discharging more than 1 million tons of treated radioactive water from the plant into the ocean, a process that will take decades to complete. Regulators have deemed it safe to release the water, which is filtered to remove most isotopes, although it still contains traces of tritium, an isotope of hydrogen hard to separate from water. Still to come in sports, Selangor FC secures ACL2 spot with win over Kelantan. Selangor confirmed their spot in next season Asian Champions League 2 ACL2 in emphatic fashion, thrashing Kelantan Darul Naim 7-0 at the MBPG Stadium on Saturday to secure the Super League runners-up spot. The Red Giants now have 46 points, 10 ahead of third-place Sabah, 36 points, with only 3 matches remaining.
The result means Sabah can no longer catch Selangor, securing the Red Giants' place in ACL2. The night belonged to Faisal Halim, who marked his long-awaited return to scoring form with a stunning hat-trick, his first goals of the season since an acid attack in May 2024. The winger struck in the 13th, 45th and 66th minute in a fairy tale comeback. Quentin Chang also got in on the action, netting in the 31st minute, while Haris Haikal Adam Afkar bagged a quick-fire brace in the 54th and 56th minutes. Izwan Yuslan completed the route with a goal in the 73rd minute, sealing a night to remember for Selangor, who have won the Challenge Cup this season. Meanwhile, Selangor FC head coach Katsuhito Kinoshi, in a post-match press conference, remains proud of his charges in attaining the crucial points for next season's ACL2.
So, if you do the same thing of this year, so result will be not so good. So we must effort much more than this year's using this the 2024 to 2025. So next years we must have a more strong training and also strong mentalities and also strong wish.
KDN FC assistant head coach Rizal Zamri Yahya noted that the lack of training was the factor of the defeat in the match.
Sekarang ni memang kita tak ada menjalin latihan bersama lah. So sejak saya rasa last lawan Selangor kat sini Challenge Cup second round, selepas tu kita tak menjalin latihan bersama. And every game kita datang satu hari sebelum game, lepas tu terus menghadapi perlawanan. So untuk kita mengatur pemain pun agak sukar, depends on player punya kemahuan.
Saturday's La Liga game between Barcelona and Osasuna at Luis Companys Olympic Stadium has been postponed due to the death of the Catalan club's doctor, Carles Minaro Garcia. The home side made an announcement on the matter just minutes before the match was scheduled to start.
Both teams announced the lineup and the players went into warm-up before Barcelona declared that the game was postponed via the stadium speakers. According to La Liga, a new date will be set in the coming days by its competition committee. FC Barcelona said in a statement that the club was deeply saddened to announce the passing of first-team doctor Carles Minaro Garcia on that evening. The club then went on to announce for that reason the match between FC Barcelona and Saya Osasuna has been postponed to a later date. The FC Barcelona Board of Directors and all staff took the opportunity to extend heartfelt condolences to his family and friends during this difficult time. Barcelona topped the La Liga standings with 57 points, one ahead of Atletico Madrid, with Real in third on 54 points.
Over in tennis, Brazilian teen sensation João Fonseca tumbled out of the Indian Wells ATP Masters on Saturday, beaten 6-4, 6-0 by 13th seeded Jack Draper of Britain.
Spurred on by an enthusiastic contingent of Brazilian fans, the 18-year-old from Rio de Janeiro kept it close in the first set. But he paid a price for taking too many risks against a more physical and experienced opponent, and Draper, a US Open semi-finalist last year, strung together 9 straight games to secure the win. Draper, slowed early this season by a flare-up of hip tendinitis, said the match was tougher than the scoreline might indicate. In the third round, Draper will take on American Jensen Brooksby, who upset in-form Canadian Felix Auger-Aliassime earlier. On the other hand, Fonseca arrived in Indian Wells just weeks after he became the 10th youngest ATP champion in history when he triumphed at the Argentina Open in February. He had secured his first Masters 1000 level match win on Thursday with a gritty victory over Britain's Jacob Fernley.
In the women's draw, Australian Open champion Madison Keys breezed into the third round at Indian Wells on Saturday, subduing hard-hitting Russian Anastasia Potapova 6-3, 6-love in her first match since her maiden Grand Slam triumph.
Keys, whose victory over two-time defending champion Aryna Sabalenka in Melbourne was the culmination of a 15-year journey from teenage prodigy to major champion, reached a career-high ranking of 5th in the world on Monday. She showed no sign of rust as she dispatched Potapova in 63 minutes. Keys kick off an action-packed day on Stadium Court in the prestigious combined ATP Masters and WTA 1000 event. Keys broke the Russian serve for a third time to clinch the first set and roll through the one-sided second set under sunny skies in the California desert to extend her winning streak to 13 matches. Next up for the world number 5 is a third-round meeting with either 28th seed Elise Mertens, who earlier defeated, or Kimberly Birrell of Australia.
London Eye marks 25 years since first opening. That's next in our Offbeat segment.
Sunday will mark 25 years since the London Eye first opened its ports to the public. Since then, the attraction has welcomed more than 85 million visitors, featured in hundreds of films and television shows, and borne witness to around 8,000 proposals. One of the architects of the wheel, Julia Barfield, told it felt pretty amazing to be celebrating its 25th anniversary.
I mean, it does feel pretty amazing. It's testament not only to me, but of course to my partner, David Marks, who sadly is no longer with us, but and to, I mean, we calculated that there must have been about 1,000 people who really helped make it happen. So it's not the act of a single person or even 2 people, it's the act of many, many people who made it happen.
Barfield and Marks designed the wheel in their kitchen in the London area of Stockwell in 1993. They submitted their idea to the Millennial Competition, organised by the Architecture Foundation, with the Sunday Times newspaper, and although no one emerged victorious, they still set about realising the project. The London Eye, which remains today the world's largest cantilevered observation wheel, was originally intended to stand for around 5 years. However, in July 2002, it was granted a permanent license, and in 2024, it was confirmed as a permanent fixture on the South Bank along the River Thames. AI-powered Dreaming Room by Turkish-American artist Rafik Anadol was unveiled at the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao on Thursday. Under the name Living Architecture Gehry, the artist uses artificial intelligence to reinterpret the architectural legacy of Frank Gehry, designer of the Guggenheim Museum, in which the exhibition takes place, through generative art. Anadol's installation utilizes an AI model trained over months of a vast array of freely accessible images, sketches, and plans. This model is aimed to dynamically translating Gehry's architectural vocabulary into ever-evolving forms, colors, and movements. Inside the gallery, nearly 50 projectors present the artwork at a high resolution of 20,000 pixels, showcasing 25 million ethically collected images of nature and Gehry's work. Rome's legendary Trevi Fountain, known for its breathtaking Baroque beauty and the tradition of coin tossing, became the backdrop for a mesmerizing video mapping show on Saturday in celebration of International Women's Day. The event, called I Am or Io Sono, transformed the iconic landmark into a dynamic display of light and imagery, symbolizing the ongoing fight for gender equality. The spectacle aimed to inspire reflection on women's rights and representation, organizers said. Adding to the experience, a live musical performance by the city's police band accompanied the installation, creating an immersive celebration of progress and empowerment. With over 100 events planned citywide, the initiative in the Eternal City aimed to reinforce the message that gender equality is not just a one-day commitment, but a continuous movement for change.
It's a fantastic event. It's one of the more than 100 events actually we are organizing for the International Women's Day. And this is beautiful because on the facade of one of the most iconic monuments in the world, a lot of women will define themselves with their own words.
Thousands of Thai devotees gathered at Wat Bang Pra Temple in Nakhon Pathom before dawn on Saturday for Thai Wai Khru, an annual festival that honors and pays tribute to the late Luang Por Pen, a revered magic tattoo master. The devotees have sacred images covering their bodies, which are believed to offer protection, bring good luck, and even heal sickness. In return for the magical inscription, one must offer a flower, incense, a pack of cigarettes, and donate an amount based on their faith. Saturday's ceremony was marked by prayers, chants, and a sacred water blessing for good fortune. During the ritual, some devotees exhibited behaviors that resemble the animals on their tattoos, such as tigers and monkeys. These devotees were seen running, growling, shouting, and gesticulating wildly around the temple grounds while appearing to be in a trance.
บางคนก็จิตอ่อนบางคนก็อุปทานหมู่หลายๆอย่างแล้วมีทั้งเก๊ทั้งแท้ทั้งเทียมมีผสมผสานไปหมดแต่ทั้งนี้ทั้งนั้นแล้วเวลาของที่มันขึ้นจริงๆคือก็แบบไม่รู้ตัวครับมันกำหนดควบคุมตัวเองไม่ได้
That wraps up World Today this time around. In our top story, China announces over $2.6 billion tariffs on Canada. I'm Del Bahardin. Thank you for watching. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Assalamu alaikum, salam Malaysia Madani.